Welcome to Legendary Physique. I'm Richard Baldwin, your host, and I'm talking to Jerry Brainum about his July issue of Applied Metabolics. Jerry, that last month was really great. I especially like the article you did on sleep, because that's one of my problems.
Yeah.
And that really talked about how important it is to training and all that, and health. Then I also really liked the article, and I think it was very important, was on being able to gain muscle with lighter weights.
Right.
Because that's good for young people as well as older people, because a lot of people have hurt themselves on the job or something, and they can still maintain some good muscle using lighter weight that's not stressing the joint so much.
Right.
So what do you got for us this month?
Well, I just want to say real fast that that system, that lightweight system, it was actually developed originally for older people that were in the early stages of what they call sarcopenia, which is muscle loss with age, and they just could not lift heavy weights. I mean, it's one of those things where if they took a 50-pound dumbbell, it would break their arm. So they had to figure out a system. And I'll just say real fast, they gave that system to older, but get this, you won't believe this, Richard, a 96-year-old person was able to put muscle on using that lightweight going to failure system.
I'm counting on it as I get older.
96. Now, that even surprised. Could you imagine? I mean, if you said to me before I read that, if you said, could a guy at 90 years old put muscle on, I would absolutely say, no way, no chance, nothing. I was like stunned. But anyway, in the July issue, I got some good stuff coming up, Richard.
You always do. I was looking at past issues. I'm going like, my God, I got this huge resource now already. And when I have a question, first place I go is your newsletter to see if you've already answered it.
Yeah. I mean, all you got to do is you do a search in the search box, because I have everything keyed in, all the keywords. You find it in 2 seconds. It's practice. Yeah. I mean, it's almost 2 years. September makes 2 years since I started the newsletter. And the thing is, it's like I have so much information. It's like an encyclopedia, seriously.
I know. It's great.
But in this July issue, I don't know if you ever heard of this tanning drug stuff, Rich. Have you heard of this stuff like Melanotan and
Yeah, they did that before. They were doing that before the lotions came out and everything, the spray stuff.
Well, this is different. This was actually developed. I think it was the 90s. But I basically, you and I were both competitive bodybuilders. I mean, you were a lot more successful than me, obviously. But the thing is, we all both know that if you're a Caucasian, you got to have a tan. You can't compete in a contest.
Those lights just wash any definition out.
Washes it out. When you get in,
especially since they started doing video and stuff.
Yeah, you get into those bright posing lights. If you don't have a tan, I don't care how cut you are, you look terrible, right? Yeah. So, we've, over the years, basically in this article, I talked about some of my personal experiences, because I have dark hair, dark eyes, but I burn like a blonde or a redhead. I just can't get a tan. It's always been freckles and sunburn. And I talk about my various voyages into trying to get a tan, the things I use. It's kind of funny. I mean, you'll get a kick out of it because you remember some of these techniques. Yeah. Then I segue into the actual tanning drug. They're called melanotans. They're based on a hormone made in the body called alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone. And it's basically these drugs are analogs where they last a lot longer in the body, and they're 1,000 times more powerful. You still have to go in the sun, but you use these drugs and you can actually make you dark. But the problem is, the reason I did this article is these things are being sold all over the internet. They're extremely popular. In fact, there's two main versions. One's called Melanotan 1, the other one's Melanotan 2. Melanotan 2 is especially interesting because it's more potent than Melanotan 1. Let's call it M1, M2. M2 is more powerful, and it has some unique side effects. One of them is that it causes spontaneous erections in men. I mean, fast.
That can be embarrassing at the beach.
Oh, yeah, much faster than, it makes Viagra seem like a joke. Viagra. The thing is, they actually isolated a part of it and tried to turn it into a drug, that compete with Viagra. The problem was that the drug version had it made your blood pressure spike up to the point where it can give a healthy guy a stroke. So, needless to say, anyway, I go into that. I go into the perils and pitfalls of this stuff. And I think it's a pretty interesting article because I go into the complete history of obtaining a tan in bodybuilding, and then I talk about natural ways to protect your skin, all the nutrition that'll protect your skin and prevent excessive aging from skin exposure, because that's the main cause of aging of the skin is actually.
Yeah, I don't even go out in the sun anymore.
Yeah,
I avoid it.
I mean, you look at some of the guys back in the 70s who were the sunbathers. I mean, you see them today, they got like wrinkles you can't believe. They look like prune sauce.
Leather.
I'm telling you, yeah. Anyway, so that's first off. Then I do an article that's like very little. There's very few people know about this stuff. It has to do with protein oxidation. I mean, you're probably familiar with fat oxidation.
Yeah.
There's two types of fat oxidation. One of them is what we burn in the gym. The good part, where you want to burn fat. You don't actually burn fat, you oxidize it, which is a good thing. We want to lose fat. That's great. We do aerobics for fat to stimulate fat oxidation. And of course, the other bad part of fat oxidation is when fat becomes exposed to oxygen, it can become rancid, like fish oil.
Yeah.
That's a bad form of fat. But a little known oxidation relates to protein. And again, there's two types of protein oxidation. There's the protein oxidation that it can occur in food, like your protein foods, like meat, milk, that kind of stuff. And there's a protein oxidation that can occur in your body. Now, the protein oxidation in your body can cause some serious problems, and like Alzheimer's disease and heart disease, all these things. And the interesting part is I talk about what happens with protein drinks, because people don't realize some of the most popular protein drinks, when you mix it, you cause an oxidation reaction. Nobody's ever written about this. And believe it or not, the thing that causes the oxidation of, let's say, a whey protein is some of the things they put in the whey protein, nutrients, react with the amino acids. And anyway, I go into the detail. It sounds technical, but I make it real simple, and I give you a couple of ways to deal with this protein oxidation. I give you which foods, how to buy certain foods to avoid it. It's going to make a big difference, because I'll tell you, let me give you a flat statement, Richard. When amino acids are oxidized, they're useless. They can't be used by the body. So if you take, let's say, eat some meat where a lot of the amino acids are already oxidized, the biological value of the protein in meat goes down to like nothing. It's like not going to do anything for you. Instead of getting 100 grams of protein, you're lucky if you're getting 25. So anyway,
sounds like an important article.
I think a lot of people will find that interesting. Then, for the over 40 guys, again, there's a thing called, you might remember, I mentioned it over and over in my articles, this situation called anabolic resistance, which is when you get older, there's a thing where you can digest protein well, you can absorb protein well, but for some reason the amino acids don't get into the muscle the way they did when you're in your 20s and 30s. So they call this anabolic resistance. And I go into what causes anabolic resistance, ways to deal with it. But the main part of the article is I found a new study showing a simple technique that any guy or woman over 40 can use that will actually not only overcome anabolic resistance, but will allow them to have the same level of muscle protein synthesis, which is the key to muscle hypertrophy, as somebody 20 to 30 years old. It's basically.
Can't wait to read that one.
And it's such a simple technique. You'll be smiling when you read it. You're going to laugh when you read it.
Great.
It's like right in front of everybody who never even thought about it. And then the final article in there is I do something. It's called a system I came on. Richard, there's an old saying, you've probably heard it. There's nothing new under the sun when it comes to training and nutrition. A lot of these, it's the same old thing. You go in, you lift heavy weights, you rest, you take your protein. But the truth is, a guy like me who reads all the science, this stuff, there's always new stuff coming out, but a lot of it, people don't write about. Well, I found this study. It was done by these French researchers, and they wanted to come up with a way of building muscle fast, but without spending a lot of time in the gym, right? And the good part is normally that would be like a train to failure system, like, the Arthur James system.
Or something.
Like 1 or 2 sets to failure. And this system, it actually has to do with a manipulation of rest time and repetitions in a certain format that allows you to get maximum, let's say, stimulation to the muscle in, like, let me put it this way, in 5 minutes of training, the muscle is hit like you've trained it for 25 minutes. In 5.
Wow.
So I thought I'm trying the system my own now, and let me tell you, it's not easy. It's just as hard as training to failure, but it's not going to fail you. So the people that don't like to train, or let's say psychologically you can't train to failure, this is a good alternate system for them. It'll work well. Well, and I just want to briefly mention, Richard, do you have any questions about anything I just said, by the way? Did you want to ask?
No, I can't wait to read that article. I mean, I never did go to failure. I would go really close.
Yeah.
Well, I might have when I was training for a contest, but I would kept cutting down the volume as well as the time between sets.
Right.
And I'd get arm workout done in 15 minutes. But I only did like 2 exercises, 3 sets each.
Yeah.
But I did it with so much weight and so fast, and just if I wasn't doing it to failure, I was right at there. And my arms just kept growing, but I couldn't keep that kind of training up very long.
Well, the truth of the matter is I have trained to complete muscular failure when I did like the Nautilus system years ago. And I can tell you that there are some problems with training to failure all the time. It's kind of hard on the joints. And, it actually...
It can get to your adrenal glands, too, can't it? Wear them out?
Sure. It puts a lot of stress on your adrenal gland, sympathetic nervous system. It also, believe it or not, if you do it too long, it tends to interfere with an anabolic hormone produced in muscle called insulin-like growth factor 1. It can actually interfere with that. And this is one of the main internal muscle stimulating hormones that stimulates muscle hypertrophy. So, training to failure is a great system. It's great to pull you out of a rut. But I don't really think it should be done all year round. I think there's a limit. I think it's best to keep it to about maybe 2-3 months out of the year. Unless you're using that light system I talked about in the last issue, where if you're lifting light weights, you're not putting the same strain on your connected to, then you could do it all the time. But if you're lifting heavy weights, you definitely have to put a limit on it. And I just want to mention some of these upcoming articles that I have planned we're not going into detail. I'll just mention like one sentence each. Estrogen in milk. I mean, I've already written a couple of articles on it. I mean, I still see it all over the internet where these guys are warning each other on the forums, don't drink milk. It has estrogen. It's going to make you fat. I even did a video about this. But the thing is, I have some new information that's never been written about the true effects and content of estrogen in milk. This article, once and for all, will end the controversy.
Okay.
Then it's going to be exercise. I'm going to do an article on exercise recovery methods. Heat, cold, all these non-nutritional methods. Which ones work? Which ones don't work? Then I have one plan on a substance called BPC 157. This is a peptide substance that has absolutely remarkable effects on tendon and connective tissue healing. This stuff is like unbelievable. I think it's one of the things that actually works. I'm going to explain how it works, what it does, the safety behind it. Then I have, I'll get real briefly, interesting article. You'll get a kick out of this one, Richard. I'm gonna do an article. You remember the old thing about roid rage? How some steroids,
which I think was made up by lawyers and never existed.
Exactly. The idea is that steroids are a Jekyll and Hyde substance. You could give it to a normal guy who's even-tempered. You give him the steroids, he's gonna want to kill his wife, his kids, and he's gonna rob stores, crash his car.
And the general public believes that crap.
Don't believe it. But get this. I'm going to describe in an article who really gets roid rage. Which is the type of person where if he takes steroids, he has a high chance of getting not crazy, but let's say a little bit more temperamental. In other words, who is the guy or woman or whatever, when you take steroids, there's a risk of having some of these like anger problems. It is a certain type of person. I'm going to explain in this article.
Okay, great.
I thought it'd be. Then there's an article on organic. These pollutants that we're all exposed to. They're all over the place. Everywhere. You can't really live in modern day society without being exposed to these pollutants. I'm going to do an article on the relationship. Get this, these pollutants, Richard, they're fat soluble. They're stored in your body. And you know what they found? These things can interfere with fat oxidation when you work out, and they can also stimulate body fat. And I'm going to explain all the background, how it happens and what it does. And then I discovered this is...
Well, I hope you're giving a solution, too.
I do give a solution. I always give solution.
Yeah.
Then I found something that is absolutely mind-boggling to me. You know, we've talked about this before. You know, the big thing in medicine now is the microbiome. This is the population of intestinal bacteria that reside in the colon. They found that.
I mean, they're even saying it has something to do with depression and stuff.
Oh, it has it affects.
I mean, there's so much to learn about. It's not even funny.
Oh my God, it's so far-reaching that it's it's 99% of your immune system is related to the balance of bacteria in your intestine. It controls whether you get fat. When you eat food, it kind of can determine whether let's say, carbohydrates are going to either be burned as energy or turned into body fat. All this stuff is controlled. I found there's a relationship. It's still a hypothesis, to be honest with you. It's not, scientific fact yet, but I'm going to explain all the details. They think that in a certain percentage of men, this is like shocking, in a certain percentage of men, having an imbalance of the microbiome can actually cause low testosterone. Can you believe this crap? Low testosterone. I mean, it's unbelievable. If you would have told me this 2 weeks ago, I would have said, no way. No, it can do a lot of things. It does not affect hormones. No, I'm sorry. But apparently it does. And, I got a lot of other stuff. I'm going to do an article on, we were talking about, like, in this tanning article, I mentioned about the skin aging effect. Well, I'm going to have a whole article on skin aging itself. What causes it? What can you do to minimize skin aging? A lot of women will be interested in this because they're very concerned about the aging of their face and all that. I'm going to talk about exactly what causes it and everything known to prevent it and minimize it. Minimize it. So
as soon as you read an article about how to reverse it, let me know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, right. That's a tough one, to be honest. Yeah. This is more of a preventive thing, but let me...
I actually said, I saw a rat study where they actually have been able to do that with rats.
Yeah, well...
But that's a big difference than humans.
Yeah, they can do it. And, probably, I guess in the near future, the way the stem cell research is going... I mean, it's just a question of basically regenerating the skin proteins, which is, collagen and elastin. If you can figure out a way to turn them out like you did when they were, produce them to the same extent as you did when you were a teenager or when you were younger, then theoretically you might actually be able to fill out the wrinkles and look 20, 30 years younger without a facelift.
Yeah, rebuild the elasticity of the skin.
Yeah, because I can tell you out here, you see a lot of people with facelifts, and after a while, they look grotesque. You get too many faces. They have this, like, weird-looking face. I mean, you want to avoid that. So anyway, so that's it. That's it for the Applied Metabolics. And
all right. Sounds great. I'll tell you what. I just want to say something to everybody out there that you need to subscribe to this newsletter. You will not regret it. Every month, there's great stuff, and you'll say to yourself, wow, I'm glad I'm getting this. All right. Well,
but just one other thing, Richard. A lot of people, as I said in a couple of the videos that we did, I'm trying to write about stuff that you won't find all over the internet. I mean, I explain basic stuff for the people that aren't familiar with it, but my focus is on stuff that you won't find, unusual stuff, kind of off the road stuff. But I think one of the biggest advantages of my Applied Metabolics is me, in the sense that I'm not trying to put a halo of myself. I'm talking about sheer longevity. In other words, I've been studying and involved in this stuff, believe it or not, for almost 5 decades. So I inject everything I know into this newsletter. In other words,
well, the thing about your newsletter articles, too, is they're evidence-based. You summarize a huge amount of evidence and make it accessible to the rest of us without having to... You go on the internet, you don't know half the time whether this site is reliable or not. Or you hear one study that says one thing, another study says another, but you look at the meta studies and you figure out what they really think they know at this point.
Yes, and I also I've always had a habit, for a lot of people notice this in my bodybuilding magazine articles, I always present both sides of the story. In other words, I don't take a stand. In other words, as you say, I present the evidence, and I present, let's say, the pros and the cons. Well, let's say one group says you should have, with 40 grams of protein per meal. Then I present another group that says, well, no, you only need 20 grams. And I'll present the evidence on both sides, and I'll let the reader decide. And then finally, this is where my experience comes in, I'll tell my personal experience and the experience of athletes I've worked in, and everybody, so they can get an idea of the empirical evidence behind what I'm talking about. So it covers the complete waterfront, literally, about every one of these subjects. There's nothing I know of, seriously, nothing I know of on the internet internet magazines that does this to this extent. Like this issue coming out that we just discussed, Richard, it's 52 pages. It's like more of a book. It's not I always think funny calling it a newsletter. It's like an ebook, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the.
All right. Well, till next time, keep pumping iron and keep reading Jerry's newsletter. Goodbye.